So last week, hundreds of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from all over the country met in Central Australia to discuss a referendum on constitutional recognition of Indigenous people. Now, the group rejected the idea of constitutional recognition, instead favouring a treaty and a constitutionally enshrined political body to allow their voices to be heard in the political process. Now, Nick, I think this is really interesting because they've obviously rejected this symbolic idea of constitutional recognition and want real and meaningful
action.
But it could be symbolic in essence anyway.
Well,
what
it
they're
might
doing.
be.
Well, that's probably how it would end up.
Yeah.
It may well, but at least I think it's really interesting that they've rejected outright this idea that it's enough to just be named in the Constitution
That's
or
symbolic
acknowledged
too.
as the first people of the country. What do you think?
Look, you know, there's the whole reaction, Barnaby Joyce, not going to fly. It's never going to work, you know. Pretty standard sort of stuff. And what it makes me wonder is I see it as kind of, it's totally like more, if we could go any further backwards in our relationship with Indigenous Australians, this is another example of it. You know, what's the threat of this? Like, what happens if you
What are they scared
You mean
of,
to
eh?
Barnaby Joyce?
Yeah. If you pushed all this through, right, and you'd probably end up with a situation where you had a new body constitutionally enshrined, which you'd just ignore and, you know, it would be business as usual. I don't believe that they have any interest in, you know, making real gains with this sort of stuff. And it just makes me wonder, what is the threat? You know, I saw this story on the TV last night. It's about some Aboriginal groups don't want people to drive four-wheel drives and quad bikes through sacred areas of land. They're like, please don't.
Yeah.
And these like motoring enthusiast sort of characters are like, well, fucking why not? And the answer to that is, because you're allowed to do it over there. They just don't want you to do it right here. Like, just ease up.
Bit of respect.
You know, it's like 10 square kilometres or it's nothing. Just cool it off, and they still won't even accept that.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I mean, it was interesting because the Federal Indigenous Affairs Minister, Nigel Scullion, came out and said that he thinks some members of the government were frightened by something they didn't understand, which to me, I actually thought,
It's probably
okay,
true.
That's probably true.
It's probably true.
That's probably true. But even Barnaby Joyce, like, he got it all wrong. Like, he was basically suggesting that there was going to be some additional chamber of parliament, and which is actually not at all the proposal. And you sort of think, you know, who are these people?
Yeah.
Who are these elected
representatives? It sort of reminds
representatives?
me of our sporting teams, and especially within the AFL. If you notice, there's no more than 3 or 4 Indigenous players on any AFL team, basically because, well, they don't want to create a faction within the team, and then the coach loses the authority over the team because then he has to get to the factional leader to get through to those groups of players. So they might have maybe 1, 2 or 3, and that's where they can gain control over the Indigenous players there. It's the same sort of thing here. They don't want to give too much because they don't know what it might lead to, and that's the problem.
But what could it possibly lead to? Like, you know, is the idea that there's going to be some sort of black fella revolution is going to spring up when really, from their point of view, they only want this much more, like, you know, it's inch by inch.
Right.
But in the white man's head, and I'll
No.
tell you what, this is latent guilt and fucking so you should have it. It's this idea that give them an inch, you know, they'll take a mile.
No,
It's not even realistic.
It's just so
It's
condescending and
stupid. It's
patronising.
stupid.
And it reminds me a lot about the discussions that there were in the aftermath of the Mabo judgment, which I remember being at law school and studying that. And there was so much hysteria around, it just means that everyone's backyard is unsafe and people who've paid all this money for their houses are going to lose their properties. And it's sort of like, no, you know, it doesn't work like that. And there's this, for me anyway, I think that if you've got, you know, these Indigenous leaders, these communities coming together saying, this is what we need to move forward, to have control, some level of control over our destiny. I mean, even Noel Pearson came out and said, it's very likely that if this body gets up, that Parliament could ignore it.
Yeah, but that's true. But, like, what are they talking about? 4 people anyway? Only 4 people?
Well, I think that process is going to be worked out, and we're still waiting for the report coming out of these meetings that were held last week.
They're still a bit hamstrung with those 4 people anyway.
Well, they may well be, but at least it gives them a voice. And I think that's important. If there are people coming to you saying, we are a dispossessed people, we are the only Commonwealth nation that hasn't entered into a treaty with its Indigenous people. If the Indigenous people are coming to you and saying, we need this to move forward, then why not? Like, what the hell is the problem?
Because they don't want them to move forward, never have. Same old story. You know what? Nation founded by a bunch of crooks. thieves, liars, and fucking scumbags who started ripping off everyone from the get-go, including the Aborigines, and frankly, nothing has really changed.
And that's probably a very good point to wrap up that story.